Begin today the Gemara on Daf Pei Vav Amud Beis, where it says Tashema. The Gemara before brought a statement from Rav and Shmuel that when a person says that he's selling a kor, which is 30 saw, for shloishim, for 30 slayim, for 30 coins, that's all he said. That means that it's one sale. So until the seller gives him the last amount that it should make up that amount of a kor, you can still retract from the sale. However, if the seller says first kor b'shloishim, but then he spells out and says that saw b'sela, that each individual saw you're paying one selah for it. Why did he spell out that each individual saw is a selah? To say that as soon as you get one saw, that's the sale is complete for that saw. You get another saw, the sale is complete for that. So you can't have charata after you got the sale is complete once you got whatever you got. That was the statement. So now here the Gemara brings a question on this from a Braisa. And this will be over here a Braisa that will discuss something related to ribis, as we'll see. Tashema says in the Braisa as follows: a seicher es a poyel, a person hires a worker, and this is a person that's hiring a worker ahead of the season when he needs this worker to work with. As we'll see here, we're talking about a worker that's going to be working in the field in the time of when you gather the tvua, in the time when you make the pile, and that's later on in the season, it's later in the summer. And this is, let's say, in the beginning of the summer, or this is in Nisan time, where it's before the season, and he's hiring this worker in advance. Lasa is imoy legayren, he's going to work for him in the time of the gayren, in the time when you gather and you make the pile of all the grain. And what is he hiring for? What's the price? Hayayim b'dinner. A day, he's paying him for the work of a day, one dinner. Okay, now what's the actual price of this worker if you would have hired him later on, then in the time of the season when his work is? Then he's much more expensive to hire this worker. If you're hiring him then, you would have to pay 4 times the amount, 4 times the price. As the Braisa continues, Ulugayden, if you would hire him then in the high season when everybody is looking for these workers, then Yafasela. Then this worker is worth a selah. Elamai, because you're giving him the money in advance, you're hiring him a couple of months in advance, and you already gave him the money. So this worker that needs the money is ready to be hired for a quarter of the price, just to get a dinner per day. A selah is 4 dinarim, so he's getting a quarter of the price. So the Braisa says, Asr lahanis hemena. You're not allowed to have anah of this work that the worker does. Some Rishonim are not even going to the word lahanis hemena, some just going to asr, that this is not allowed to be done. And the reason this is not allowed to be done is because this is like ribis. Because the only reason that this worker agrees to get paid a quarter of the price is because you hired him in advance and you paid him before. And now when he comes to you later, a few months later, and he does his work, so he's giving you back. How's he paying you back? He's paying you back with his work, which now is worth a selah a day, not a dinner a day. So you're paying him back. The worker is paying back 4 times the amount of what he got paid. And now this is similar to the concept of ribis. Why is he paying back more with his work? Because he got his money in advance. And the employer was waiting to get paid back. He had to wait to get paid back his value, just like every time ribis, that you lend someone money and you wait, aganatar, you're getting paid interest because you're waiting to get back your money. So here, he paid you in advance and he's waiting for you to work for him a couple of months. And because of that, you're working for him and you're giving him back a value that's 4 times as much. So this is like ribis. So therefore this is asa. Aval, however, im sachrei mehayim b'diner le'yim, that if you hired him from today, meaning that he's starting to work for you today, even though the time of the season that he's working for you for the gayren comes in a couple of months and you're hiring him in advance, but you're not hiring him and telling him go home and come back in a couple of months from now. You're hiring him today. He's starting to work for you today already. And it's b'dinner liyoim, and you're paying him only 1 dinner for a day, which is again only a quarter of the price. So l'gayda and yafasela, if you would hire him in the season when everyone is being hired, then you would have to pay him a selah. But over here though, because he begins actually to work for you today, then mutter. Then this is allowed. Over here, this is not aganatar. Over here, he's not paying you back work extra, which has an extra value when he comes back later on. He's actually starting to work for you today. Sorry, so because he's working for you right away, let's say he's going to work for you now for the next 100 days, and including the time of the Gairen when his work is going to be more expensive, but he's working for you the entire time. So because he's starting to work for you today, so therefore in such a case, I pay him according to the price that a worker is hired today, and it's not considered to be a union of ribis. That's the halacha of this brayse. So now the question is, all this time period, from when you hired him until later on, when it's going to be the season of the Gaiden. And then, when it comes the season of the Gaiden, his work is actually more valuable. But what we say, because he's already starting to work today, it's one continuous time of work, there's no ribbis here. But the question is, v'isal kedaitach. If you're going to say, like what Rav and Shmuel said, kor b'shloishim, if you say to a buyer, I'm selling you this kor for 30, and then you spell out, saw b'sela, each individual saw is worth a sela, ani moichalach. That's what I'm selling to you. So what did Rav and Shmuel say? Rishain kana. Every individual saw that you get is like a separate sale, and he acquires it if he pays the seller for that saw. So if so, we should apply that here as well regarding the days that you're hiring this worker. Hachanami, here we should say, kama, mifsak, pasak. Each individual day that the worker is working is a day for itself, and each day is separate from the next day. And if so, v'asel lahanis himenu. And it should not be allowed to have a nor from him. That's okay. So what's the shaila of the Gemara? Over here, what did the employer say? He told him, as the Gemara here brings now, what he told him was, just a second, let me see at the Gersa, that midiner liyoim. He said, I'm giving you a dinner for a day, ulegaire and yafesela. And if later on, by the time of the Gaidan, it's worth a sela, so then it says mutter. It's allowed if he's working for him all the days that are in between. But the question is, why is that mutter? Amai, why is this mutter? V'ho agar natalihu. This should also be considered that he's paying back with his work, that's worth 4 times as much. And it's still considered. It shouldn't be considered to be ribbis. Let me just explain what the Gemara is saying here. The point that the Gemara is saying, it should be considered to be like ribbis. The point the Gemara is saying is the distinction that the Braisa made in the Reisha and the Seifa was that in the Seifa he hired him in advance, and then he tells him go home, and then come back in a few months from now, and then you're going to start working for me. And he gives him back the value of work, which is 4 times as much. So that the Braisa said is ribbis. But if he's working for him the entire time, so because he starts working now, so you can't say aganata. He's not waiting to give back that value of work. He's hiring him for the price that he's worth now, and he's starting to work for him right away. But the Gemara says, but if you're going to say that each day is individual and separate, so then you can't say that. You're paying him today a dinner for the value of the work today. That's today. Tomorrow it's still worth a dinner. So then you're paying him for that day a dinner. But then you're also paying him the price of a dinner, and you gave him in advance all that money also for the work that he's going to do later, which is worth a sela 4 times as much. So then it should be still be considered ribbis. He started working for him now. Why does that matter? It's all one, and you're saying that it's all one hemshech, but it's not one hemshech. Each day is individual. Each day is separate. So you're paying him in advance a value of a dinner for the work that he's going to do later, which is worth a sela. So why is there any difference if he starts working now or he doesn't start working now, if each day is considered to be separate from the other day?
See, he's giving him a dinner on a day when the labor is not really needed. Say, I'll give you a dinner. Later on, I really need you. That's when it's busy season. But when it wasn't busy, I gave you. So now that it's busy, I should be giving. If I hired you then, I would have to give you that much more. But it equals out.
Okay, but now he's talking worth a dinner. Now the work of this worker is worth only a dinner. But later on, his work is going to have the value of a seller. So the fact still remains that you're paying him a dinner now because you're paying him in advance. And then later, when it comes to the high season, when his value of the work is worth a seller, he's paying back the work which is worth a seller. So it's still ribbis.
He didn't hire him for the day. He hired him for a period, for 100 days.
But he spelled out though. So if he would have said to him, "I'm hiring you for a dinner. I'm hiring you for 100 days for 100 coins," then the Gemara wouldn't have a question. But the question over here is because the way he said it is, he spelled out to him. The question of the Gemara is because he spelled out to him and he said, "I'm hiring you for 100 days and each day a dinner." So then it's similar to Rav and Shmuel because he spelled out each individual day, I'm paying you a dinner. He didn't just hire him for the whole 100 days as one thing. So
the whole reason why he's worth more later is because it's that season. So it's hiring for the season.
Yeah,
So
that's
one
not
hand
true.
he's saying
Okay,
it's
but
with
he did,
seed
but he
in the
did,
hand,
yeah, but
it's with
right,
the-
just like the case of Rav Shmuel. He starts off saying, "I'm selling you a full core for shleishim," and after that he spells out sa'ah b'sela. And Rav Shmuel says that each sa'ah is considered to be separate. Here as well, he said both. I'm hiring you for the whole season, but each day you're getting a dinner, so each day should be considered separate. So the Gemara says, Omar Rav. Rabbi says, you can't ask him this brayso b'chlal. But Tizbera, is this logical what you're saying? Zolzuli b'schiris. When you cheapen the price, when you give a less of a pay for a person that you're hiring, me aser? Is this really a ribis that's aser? If I hire a worker and I pay him in advance and I'm paying him a cheaper price, this is something which is there's an issue of ribis here. There's no issue of ribis here. You're allowed to pay a worker a cheaper price. B'chlal. Any worker, if the worker is desperate for work, you'll be able to hire him for cheaper. If the employer is the one that's desperate to find workers, you might have to pay expensive. It always happens like that with workers, that sometimes you pay more, sometimes you pay less. So what's b'chlal, the whole thing over here that we're saying, that he's giving you back a value of a work that's more than what you paid him? That's how it works always with workers. You pay sometimes more, sometimes less.
So that's with everything. It's with money. That's
No,
with,
but by a loan that's where the Torah says that it's agar nata, that if you pay back and more, so then it's a reward for the fact that he was waiting for his money. But this is schiros. This is not a loan b'chlal. It's schiros, and the derech of hiring workers, it depends on how desperate the worker is for work.
And when you buy an apple, when you buy
Yeah, so this talk over there's no ribbis. So over here, by buying, there's talk no union of ribbis. Right, so over here as well, by hiring a worker, there's really no union of ribbis here. So if so, the Gemara explains, so maishna reishne or maishna seifa. So then what's the difference between the reisha and the seifa? Why in the reisha are we saying that there is an issue that it's aser, and in the seifa we're saying it's mutter? And says the Gemara, reisha the loika ovid bahadei mahashta, because in the reisha he doesn't begin working for you from today. You pay him in advance, and then he goes home and he comes back in the season to work. So mechzi ki aganatari. So over here the issue is just a ribis midrabanon, or it looks like ribis, because when he comes back to work later, he's giving you back a value of work worth 4 times the amount of what you paid him. So it looks like ribis. Seifa the ka'avid ba'adei mahashta, but in the seifa, when he's working for you from today, le mechzi ki aganatari. So it doesn't look like ribis. It looks like that you hired him today and he begins his work today, and you're not waiting for him to pay you back. He starts right away paying you back with his work. So it doesn't look like ribis. So therefore over here, since the whole issue is just the appearance of what it looks like, which is Isser Midrabanan, you can't ask from here on what Rav and Shmuel said regarding whether each day is considered to be separate or not. It doesn't matter whether it's actually considered to be separate. What does it look like? If he starts working for you right away, it doesn't look like ribis. If he doesn't start working for you right away, then it looks like that when he's working for you and paying you back with the value of his work, it looks like ribis, so therefore Chachamim answer this. That's a pshat in this brayso. Okay, now going back to what it said in the Mishnah regarding a person that's selling. See, the Mishnah was already before on Daf Pei Dalar Amud Beis. The Mishnah says if a person is selling flax. So the Mishnah says, "V'mhoya mechuba bekarka." If a person is selling this flax and it's still attached to the ground, v'tolash kol shuhu, and now the buyer comes and pulls out a little bit or just one flax, kana. He acquires all the flax that are there. So the Gemara asks on this, "Mishum de tolish kol shuhu." Kana, because he's pulling out just one flax, and now he acquires all of it. How? On Rav Sheshes, so the Rav Sheshes explains, the case over here is, the seller tells the buyer, Lech yifelach karka kol shuhu. Go and improve the karka here in this place, a kol shuhu of it. And the kni kol mashallah. By improving this one area of the karka, be kind of the entire area. In other words, over here, the kinyan is the kinyan of chazaka and a karka. That if you the halacha of a kinyan of a chazaka and a karka is that you improve a little bit of the karka, so then you kind it. Over here, even though the buyer does not want to acquire the field, he only wants to acquire the flax, but the flax is still attached to the ground. So he wants to acquire all the flax that's attached to the ground. So the chiddush here is when he tells him that you can pull out some of the flax, and in that area you've improved the karka now. You can replant over there now. So you've improved the karka, the karka in one little area, you will acquire the entire flax. This is not the usual kinyan that you have in a karka. Usually it's to acquire the actual ground itself. Here you're acquiring the flax, which is attached to the ground, by improving one area of the ground, by pulling out a little bit of the flax. And this kinyan will work for all this flax that's attached to the ground. A person sells wine or oil to his friend. And then during the time of the sale, the price went up or went down. So now, could you retract from the sale? If the price went up, so then the seller wants to retract and sell it for a higher price. So if the price went down, the buyer wants to now pay the lower price. If it did not fill up yet, so then the moicher could retract from the sale because he didn't fill up the midah yet, so the sale is not complete yet. Once he filled up the midah, you have a keli where you fill up and you gave him the full amount that you're selling him, so then it belongs to the lekeach and you can't retract from the sale anymore. Okay, the Gemara will explain what kind of a keli we're talking about over here, we'll see. Now, if there's a broker in between them. Now, this broker is someone that actually buys. It's like basically like, let's say, a store that buys from a wholesaler. And they buy the produce, and then this sirso goes on and sells it to someone else for a profit. So now, if this sirso is the one that was in between them, nishbara achavis, and now if this barrel here breaks, nishbara l'sirso, who's the one that loses from this? It's the sirso that loses, because he basically buys the fruits in the basket, and then he sells it for a profit to someone else. So if whatever loss that happens over here is his loss, because it belongs to him. Another halacha, when you're selling something, and this is talking about liquids that you're selling and you're pouring from your barrel into the buyer's barrel, you have to pour out. All right, so we're talking at the beginning of the Mishnah, yayin v'shema, wine or oil. So when you're pouring out the wine and you're selling, so there's wine, there's always left over in the barrel that you're pouring from, or oil that's left over. So you have to, at least 3 drops after it empties out, you have to hold it until an additional 3 drops come out. Now, if after you did that, herkina umitzis, you tilted the barrel to its side, and because of this, it gathered more of the oil that still is left in the barrel of the seller. You can keep it. The seller can keep it. After he already poured it out, and then 3 drops came out for the buyer, after that he can keep it. Now, regarding the storekeeper, when he sells wine or oil, he doesn't have to take his time to pour that these 3 drops should come out at the end, and the reason is because he's busy with many customers, and therefore Chacham will not mechayev him to take that extra time to pour it, and you just pour it out, and whatever remains inside remains for the seller. Rabbi Yehuda says, Erev Shabbos im chashecha, if it's Friday afternoon, late Friday afternoon before Shabbos, then potter. Then you don't have to take your time to pour out the extra 3 drops because it's Erev Shabbos and you're a rush. So Chacham said you don't have to do it at that time period. So the Gemara is going to explain who Rabbi Yehuda is going on. If it's going on the Chemveni or going on just a regular person that it said before. So the Gemara, ha mida deman. This midah here, we're talking about this this barrel or whatever measure. It is. That's what
measure.
The measure that you have the wine or the oil in it. Who does it belong to? Does it belong to the seller or the buyer? Are we talking about a barrel or whatever it is that you're measuring in that belongs to the buyer? So then, so it said in the Mishnah, if you didn't fill it up yet fully, so then it still belongs to the meicher. The sale is incomplete. Why? It's you're pouring it into the cup or into the measuring cup of the buyer. So even if you didn't yet fill it fully, whatever you pour into his, he should be kind of right away. The ela midda the meicher. So it must be the Mishnah is talking about that this is a measuring cup of the seller, and he's pouring it into that measuring cup for you. But if so, mishanis malis midda lilikeach, it says when it's totally full, now you can't retract from the sale, it belongs to the likeach. Why? Midda the meicheri. But this is still a measuring cup that belongs to the seller. Rabbi Law explained it's not any of theirs. Midas sirso. It's talking about a measuring cup that is from a broker, from a third individual that is being used over here. And therefore over here, it depends. If it was totally full, then the sale is complete. If it's not full, then the sale is not complete. But how could you say that here we're talking about the midah of a sirsa of this broker? That's what the seif of the Mishnah is talking about. If there's this broker in between, nishbara chavis, and the barrel broke, nishbara the sirsa, it's his loss. So we see that the Reisha is not talking about this broker. Answers the Gemara, no. Reisha mida beloy sirser. In the Reisha, you're using the measuring cup of the broker, but it's not the broker himself that's making the sale here. The broker himself is not here, but you're using his measuring cup. So over there, the Mishnah says the difference is whether if it's full or if it's not full. Seife b'sirser atzmai. The Seife is talking about when the sirser himself, when there's another person there, the broker himself is here and he has the measuring cup and he's selling it, and it's so then over there the Mishnah is saying the halacha that it's the loss of the sirser if the measuring cup gets broken. Okay, then going on to the next thing of the Mishnah, Hirkina. That when you pour out the wine or the oil and then you allowed 3 drips to drip out, and then after that, if you still can gather more wine or oil for yourself, that is for the seller, so then that he can keep for himself. So the Gemara says, Kisalik, Rabbi Lazar, and when Rabbi Lazar came to Eretz Yisrael, Ashkechel Zeiri. So he found Zeiri, Amalei, so he says to Zeiri, Mikan Tana de Isne Rav Midas. Who is a Tana here that Rav taught him the halachas of the midas, of these measuring cups when you sell or when you buy and so on?
The 3 drops that you're adding on, is that beyond the line on the cup? Or is it concludes, it's part of the amount of a pint? So the 3 drops are actually going to make the pint? Or you have a pint and you're still giving them 3 drops?
I don't know. I don't think it's talking about, I hear what you're asking. I don't think it's talking about over here when you made up exactly a certain amount, a pint or whatever it is. You take a jug or a barrel and say, I'm selling you all the wine in this jug.
Okay.
So now then you pour it out, but there's some that's left inside. So that's what it's talking about over here. Okay, so Rabbi Lazar wanted to know, is there anybody that Rav taught him the halacha of midas? Okay, so Achvei, Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi. He showed him Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi that learned the halacha of midas by Rav. So there's a whole discussion here in Taisvis regarding Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi because he was at a much later time period. The question is, how did he learn from Rav? In one opinion, Taisvis says there's two individuals with the same name, and a discussion in Taisvis about this. Now, Amalei. So now, Allah says to Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi, my kakashilach. Or actually, Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi said to him, what is your question? It says here in our Mishnah that Hirkina, if you then tilted it to its side, umitzis, and you gathered more of the oil and the wine that's still left in your barrel, in the seller's barrel, the meicha can keep this. So the last question on this is, but we learned in another Mishnah regarding trumas, that when a person is separating trumah, now hirkina, so you have also a jug of wine which has the wine of trumah in it, and you poured it out. And you poured out everything, 3 drops, and then afterwards you tilted it to its side, umitza, and you gathered more of the wine that's still left in this barrel. Harezu truma. So this still is truma. So over here we see that if afterwards you can gather more wine over here, it still will be truma. So why by selling, when you gather it, do you say that it belongs to the seller? To the meicher. Amalei, so he answered him, Ha'itmer Allah. So what we learned about this, Amar Rabavo. Now there's out of Amar Rabbi Yechanan. The Bach says that, and he said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, Mishum Yush Bailem Nogaba. That over here in our Mishnah, the buyer gives up on this. The buyer is not interested in getting this. He understands that when he's going to get from the barrel, from the wine, the seller is not standing there all day holding it for him to pour out every single drop that's inside. It's understood that it's too much of an exertion for the seller to do that. So therefore he gives up on it. So therefore whatever's left is miyayish. It belongs to the seller. But when it comes to truma, you can't say any yiyush by truma. It's truma. So if you gather more from that wine over there, so then it's going to be asur for anybody to take. Okay, now going on to what the Mishnah said, so the Mishnah said that a regular person is supposed to pour out, 3 drops should come out at the end. But a Chenveni does not have to take his time to do that. And then the Mishnah said, Rabbi Yehuda says that on Erev Shabbos afternoon, you don't have to do this. So the shaila here is, Iboyeluhu, Rabbi Yehuda Areisha Koi, was Rabbi Yehuda going on the Reisha when it speaks about every person, when he's selling wine, and it says he has to pour out the last 3 drops, was Rabbi Yehuda coming to say that even for every person, if it's on Erev Shabbos, you don't have to do that, Ulukula, and he's coming to be lenient for every person, Oidilme, or perhaps a Seifa Koi. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda is going on the Seifa, Uluchumre. And Rabbi Yehuda is saying a halacha l'chumre that we said regarding a storekeeper, that he doesn't have to pour out the 3 drops, that's not on a regular day of the week. On a regular day of the week, a storekeeper has the time to pour out the 3 drops. It's only on Friday afternoon that he doesn't have to. That Chemveni Potter, I went down to the Bryce here. He's talking about the storekeeper in the Sefer, and he's being more stringent. So the Gemara brings a clear brayse that says that he's being more stringent. Toshama de Tanya. We learned in the brayse, Rabbi Yehuda says, Erev Shabbos Chashecha, if it's Friday afternoon and it's close to Shabbos, Chenveni Potter. So then the Chenveni, on a regular day of the week, he does have to pour out the extra 3 drops, but now it'll be Potter. V'pnei Shechenveni Potter. And that's because the Chenveni is very busy. So here we see clearly that he was more machmer. A person is sending his son to a storekeeper. So this is a son that's a cotton, he's a child, and he's sending him pundian biyadai. And you sent with your child money to pay, and you sent a pundian. This pundian is a coin that's 2 isarim, 2 isers in it. Now, what happened? What did the storekeeper do? Umadad loy be'iser shemen, and he measured, he gave him oil that's the value of 1 iser, and now v'nosan lo iser, and he gave him the change for this. He gave him back an iser. And what happened now with the child? The child is taking it back home to his father. He broke the jug of the oil. So the jug was broken, the oil is gone, and the iser that he gave him, the change to return to his father, was also lost. Who's responsible for what the child lost there? Chenveni chayev. It's the storekeeper's responsibility. Yeah, now the Gemara will explain why it's the storekeeper's responsibility. Rabbi Yehuda paiter. Rabbi Yehuda says no, the storekeeper is not responsible for this. Shal menas kain shalchay. The father sent the child to go and pick up this oil and to bring the change. So if it got lost, it's not the storekeeper's responsibility. Umaydim chachamim Rabbi Yehuda. Chachamim will admit to Rabbi Yehuda bizman shatzloiches biyad atinik, in the time when the jug of the soil is in the hands of the child, umadat chenveni l'toicha, and the chenveni is pouring the oil into it, shechenveni potter. Then in such a case, Chacham will be made that the storekeeper will be potter for this. So the Gemara will explain this as well. The Gemara explains the whole mission over here. It's hard to understand what the mission is saying over here. Why would the storekeeper be responsible for what happened now when the child is delivering it back home and it got broken? So the Gemara explains. It could explain regarding the change, the money that he gave him, the iser, and regarding the oil. So there's an argument whether the storekeeper is responsible for this loss or not. So Bahal Pligi, I can tell you that the explanation for this argument is as follows. The Rabbanan's opinion is that the storekeeper should have understood that if a child comes to him with money and with a jug to buy oil, what was the father's intention? That you should send this oil back home with this child that's not even responsible enough to be able to carry oil and the change. You should understand that the father is sending you the child with the jug to go and deliver for him oil in a responsible way, with an adult that can deliver the oil. That's what the chenveni, the storekeeper, should have understood. So if the chenveni doesn't do that, he sends it back with the child, it's the negligence of the storekeeper that gave it to a child to deliver back to the father. But Rabbi Yehuda says, no, that the storekeeper understands that he sent him this child in order for the child to come and take it back home. The father is sending him the child, and he's taking a risk the child will be able to bring it back home. So that we can understand what the machlokes here is.
This child doesn't say.
It's a cotton. This whole Gemara has to be talking about a child which is a cotton, which cannot. What age of a cotton? It doesn't make a difference. Al pi halacha, a cotton is someone that cannot take any responsibility.
Okay.
So this is regarding the oil and the change. Elo tzloichis, or shavat tzloichis. The Bach says regarding the jug that got broken over here. So who's the one that sent the tzleichis? The tzleichis is the father that sent this jug. So Aveda Midasi, this is something that the father is the one that the loss that's caused by this is his loss, because he sent the child with that tzleichis. So already on the way to the storekeeper, the father took that risk that the child could break it. But the father didn't care. The father sent it together with the child. So it's an Aveda Midas. Right? So even though the father also gave him money, and he could lose that money on the way. He gave him a pundian of money, and he could lose that money on the way there. But that pundian, though, that he gave him, what happens to that money? Now that the chenveni gets the money, and he has to give him back change. So the change that the chenveni is giving back, that's not the money that the father sent. So the change that you give back, the chenveni has to give to a responsible person. But when it comes to the tzleichus itself, the tzleichus, this is the jug that the father sent, and now you're just filling up this oil into this jug and you're sending it back with the child. So then why are you saying that it's the responsibility of the chenveni if it gets broken? So the Gemara answers here, the Gemara tries a few different answers to this. Rav Hashia says, Hocha b'balabayis moichet tzleichis askinan. We're speaking over here about a case where this balabayis is someone that sells these jugs. The Kagain, and the case here is, Shenot lo chenveni al manas lavakra. This storekeeper took this jug into his hands and he was actually inspecting it in order to buy. And therefore, once he took it into his hands with thinking that he may want to buy it, so what's the halach in such a case? So Kiddush Shmuel, the halach is like Shmuel said, the Amma Shmuel, Hanaitul Keli Mino Uman, a person that takes a Keli from a craftsman, Amanas Levakra, and he's taking it into his hands, inspecting it to see if he wants to buy it, V'nenas b'yadai, and it fell out of his hands and it broke, Chayiv. It's going to be his responsibility to pay the seller, the owner of this jug that broke in his hands. What's the explanation of what Shmuel says? So the Rashbam explains that we're talking about an item over here, let's say this jug, which is something that the price of it is set. The price of it is known. That's number one. Number two, we're talking over here about a jug, which is something which is a high demand. Everybody's looking to buy it. So as soon as the chenveni sees it and he sees, oh, this is a good jug for me to buy, and he looks at it and he knows the price for it, and we took it in his hands, he was planning on buying it, and since he was planning on buying it and there's a high demand for this seller, the father that sent it with him, which is a seller, would agree right away that it should be a sale as soon as he took it into his hands. So even if later on he changes his mind and he decides, no, you know what, forget it, I'm not going to be buying it, and he gives it back, but since as soon as he took it into his hands, he was thinking to buy it, it becomes his responsibility, whatever happens to it. So that's the case over here.
I thought he was just bringing, the child is bringing the jug.
Right, but the child brought it from his father, which also happens to be a seller of these jugs.
Oh, yeah.
So, and this is a jug which is unique and it's a high demand for it and has a certain price. So now when this wine seller sees this jug, he took it actually to buy. And he could send back to the father the wine in a different, cheaper jug. But he took it into his hands with the intention to buy it. So therefore, when he returns it to the child, it's his responsibility to make sure that it gets back to the father safely. Once he took it into his hands with the intention to buy, now it's going to be his responsibility. Okay, so now that's that's the explanation of what the Tanakhama, the Chachamim over here said, that the Chenveni is going to be responsible not only for the loss of the wine and the money, but he's also responsible for the breaking of this jug on the way. Says the Gemara, if so, Leimid Shmuel Tanoi, so that means now that this halacha that Shmuel says is a machlekes Tanoim, because Rabbi Yehuda says that you're potter, meaning that you're potter also on this jug, because even after the buyer, the chenveni, took it into his hands and he inspected it, he doesn't become responsible for this. So therefore the Gemara says, the Gemara does not want to say that what Shmuel said is a machlekes Tanoim, therefore the Gemara suggests a different shot. Rabbi and Rav Yosef both explained regarding this jug. What's the machlokes here? Hacha b'chenveni moichet tzleichis askinan. We're talking over here about the chenveni that sells these jugs. Meaning the case over here is not that the father sent the child with the jug to pick up the wine. It's the chenveni, the storekeeper, that sells the wine, and he also sells the jugs as well, together with the wine. And therefore, the same machlokes that there is regarding the wine and the money, the same machlokes applies regarding the jug itself. And Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan both go according to their reasoning, which is that according to Rabbi Yehuda, we say that it's all the father's responsibility, because if the father is the one that sent this child, so then the chenveni understands that he wants me to send the wine with the tzleichis back with this child. The father trusts the child, so therefore the chenveni is potter. But according to the Rabbanon, when you send the child, the chenveni is supposed to understand that the father doesn't want you to send it with a child. It's just to give you the message that send me the wine, deliver it with someone that's responsible. So the same thing here applies regarding the jug. But the Gemara asks on this pshat as well. What does it say in the end of this Mishnah? That Chacham would admit to Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, Bizman shat sloiches biyad atinik, when this jug is in the hands of the tinnik, umadat chenveni letoicha, and the chenveni measured and poured it into it, shechenveni potter. Then in such a case, the storekeeper would be potter. But why would he be potter? What's exactly the distinction? What's different in this case that the chenveni, the chacham, would agree that the storekeeper is potter? Didn't we say lo idui shadre, that he sent him in order to notify him that he should send with someone else? So why would he be potter for this? Why would he be meidah? It's just like regarding the wine and the money, the storekeeper is supposed to understand that he should send it with someone else, with an adult. So over here in this case, the same thing should apply, that he should have sent it with someone else. What's he being minded to over here? Okay, so the Gemara over here is going to bring different pshatim on this. We're going to have to keep it for tomorrow, and Mitzvah we'll see. Gemara will explain the pshat in the Mishnah, different ways.